Alright, just got done seeing the movie Joker. I actually saw it a few hours ago. I'm still processing in my head. Brilliant piece of work. If anything, this type of movie really speaks volumes to me, being a psychiatrist, being in the mental health field. Originally I wasn't going to watch it. However, I did see an interview by Joaquin Phoenix, the actor who played Joker. I think it was a few months ago. He mentioned that his goal was to try to go ahead and make the character Joker not identifiable by any psychiatrist. So, being a psychiatrist, I'm taking that challenge, Mr. Phoenix, with all due respect. And truth be told, I don't watch a whole lot of movies. The reason being is because I don't want any sort of external media source of some sorts influence in modifying or changing my overall cognitive schema of things, perceptions of reality. I'd rather kind of do that through my own interpersonal interactions and relationships and encounters with individuals. I'd rather prefer not some sort of artificial medium such as a cathode ray tube or a movie in this case or whatever sort of influence that. So that's the reason why I don't watch a whole lot of movies. So yeah, with that being said, further ado, let's go ahead and watch this video of announcing the Joker. Alright, right out the gate, man, I freaking love this stuff. I'm going to bypass all those flowery critiques that you've all seen these wannabe movie critics here on YouTube with their polished vids and such. I bet you there are like these 5 vids on here using the combination of words beautifully disturbing or something along those lines. But yeah, that's not me. I'm not a movie critic. I'm a psych guy, and I'm going to bring the added value here and break down the Joker. Dude, I was literally in the theater like totally diagnosing the guy. Oh, and by the way, here comes the spoilers, so to any of you who haven't watched this movie yet and are planning to, please stop the vid and I'll put a timestamp down below when the spoilers end and where you should resume this video, which is basically the ending in my saying subscribe, like, comment, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but going back to diagnoses. Any good psychiatrist will first look at medical conditions before looking at psychological ones. And right off the bat in the beginning, the scene where Arthur is playing peekaboo with a young toddler on the train, the toddler's mother gets mad at him and he starts laughing uncontrollably. Arthur then hands her a card saying that he has a medical condition, something along the lines of having, he can't control his laughter. This is known as pseudobulbar affect, a neurological condition to where one tends to laugh or cry with extreme intensity during inappropriate moments. About 2 million people suffer from this in the US, and it's a very disruptive condition, leading to a lot of folks tending to isolate themselves because they can't control these emotions. Now, in terms of other diagnoses, in the middle of the movie, it was revealed to Arthur upon reviewing old medical files that he was abused and chained to a radiator by his mother and her boyfriend at the time. In other words, his mom appeared to not be stable, and we know that she suffered from the psychiatric illnesses of delusional psychosis and narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is a real-life psychiatric diagnosis. Now, delusional psychosis, there is no official mental health diagnosis known in the DSM-5 known as delusional psychosis, or at least in the modern era that I know of, modern era in this case being the 2000s and onwards. I'm not that old, so I don't know if maybe back in the day, schizophrenia, which is what I'm guessing delusional psychosis is, if schizophrenia was referred to that back in the 1950s. But going back to the Joker, we again know that he was abused and neglected, it appears, by his mom, and a lot of times abuse and neglect can serve as a backdrop and create problems down the road. In particular, the invalidating upbringing and lack of proper nourishment and or structured and predictable nurturing in exchange for harsh, disorganized, and disruptive chaos and abuse can make it easier for a higher propensity of a characterological disorder later in life, i.e., in the Joker's case, more than likely antisocial personality disorder. The hallmark feature of antisocial personality disorder is a lack of empathy towards others, and we start to see that more and more as the movie progresses, in addition to the other hallmark feature, which is a violation of the rights of others. One thing I want to stress is that the Joker is not psychotic. Allow me to repeat that. The Joker is not psychotic. Psychosis basically includes folks who have hallucinations, delusions, disturbances of thought, speech, behavior. Not once did we see the Joker respond to what we egghead psychiatrists and psychologists refer to as internal stimuli, i.e. voices, which is the most common type of hallucination in schizophrenics, the auditory kind. By the way, the most common known psychotic disorder is schizophrenia, and the Joker definitely doesn't have that. He's not psychotic, but he's a psychopath. Oh, here's a good teaching point. What's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? Doc, why didn't you use the word sociopath to refer to the Joker? Does psychopath and sociopath, do they mean the same or are they interchangeable? The quick answer is no. Let's talk about this before getting back to the movie. The biggest key difference is that one has a weak conscience while the other one doesn't. A sociopath may rob you, for example, and he or she may have a weak conscience, that's telling him or her that taking your money is wrong, and he or she may have some guilt or remorse. However, he or she's going to still rob you nonetheless. And with a psychopath, he or she won't care and will take your money with no thinking involved. No questioning, no feeling sorry or remorseful. None of that. Just views you as an object, no conscience. Both lack empathy, but the psychopath much more. Another way to differentiate the two is that sociopaths are more warm, reactive, and more impulsive in nature. Psychopaths are more cold-hearted, calculating, and instrumental. They do more planning and plotting, and yeah, the Joker is more of a psychopath than anything, if you've read the comics and or watched the movie. So to recap, my diagnoses for the Joker would be 3. Number 1, pseudobipolar affect, number 2, antisocial personality disorder, and number 3, victim of abuse and or neglect. And you may be asking, but Doc, in the movie it was revealed that he was on 7 medications, and you only listed 3 conditions. One really doesn't count because it involved his past. Well, the reality is that there are a lot of overlapping symptoms that can be seen in each of the conditions. And I hate to say this, but in this day and age, even though a multimodal, multisystemic therapy approach is a gold standard treatment for antisocial personality disorder, we have become a society to where providers treat individuals and patients mainly with medication for the most part. This is a problem that I see with mental health today. When I was a resident looking forward to becoming a psychiatrist, I soon learned the horrors of how providers would not listen to the patient. Instead, they'd rely on a pill to treat the specific symptom. Depression, pill. Anxiety, pill. Voices, pill. Impulsivity, pill. Inattention, pill. Mood swings, pill. Everything, pill. And this is one of the biggest critiques that I have with the mental health system today. Not to point out any fingers, but a lot of this has to do with the fall of insurance companies. Insurance companies would rather approve cheap $4, $8, $12 monthly medications instead of costly weekly therapy sessions, i.e. the real treatment. Also think about it. Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but many folks with mental conditions, instead of trying to get close to the cure with some good old-fashioned therapy, let's just put a band-aid with medication. It keeps the client coming back and brings in revenue for the big dogs such as insurance corporations and pharmaceutical companies. But I digress here. Go back to the Joker. So yeah, even though he was on 7 medications, my guess is that the majority of those medications were treating specific symptoms that were affiliated with his personality disorder, which by the way is a common indirect sign. In other words, if a new patient comes to my office and I'm seeing him or her for the first time and he or she has got like a list of 6 or 7 medications, that's a red flag that with so many medications, there's a good chance that he or she may have truly a personality disorder that his or her previous provider mistook for a more commonly treated psychiatric disorder such as a mood, anxiety, and or psychotic disorder. Oh, by the way, my favorite part of the whole movie was when Arthur, aka the Joker, looked at a social worker and said, "You don't listen," or something like that. How the quality of therapists have gone down due to taking anybody due to lower salaries, and in turn the apathy from these so-called therapists, which I've seen by the way and heard horror stories from clients complaining how their therapists do not even try to help the clients solve or address their problems. If anything, the therapists tend to talk about themselves. But yeah, the whole mental health system needs to be changed, and this movie beautifully nailed this point. The fact that the social worker mentioned that she can no longer see Arthur due to funding issues, that too also got me cheering. Not so much that I was happy to see Arthur be out of luck, but the fact that the director of the movie, Todd Phillips, basically alludes to the fact that mental health funding cuts is common and it happens, and the dangers of cutting funding and how it can affect the mentally ill in a negative manner. Now look, yes, as a whole, people with mental illness do not have increased rates of violence compared to anybody else, and if anything, they're more likely to be victims of crimes. And yes, maybe the movie did make a connection in viewers' minds that there is a connection between mental illness and mass violence, such as mass shootings. That was the only drawback of the movie that I saw, but anything to bring awareness to the importance of optimal mental care and the importance of adequate funding, I'm definitely for. A couple of facts here. People who commit mass shootings in the vast majority of crimes do not have a mental illness. In fact, just 1% of gun violence is attributable to mental illness. According to Time to Change, which is a UK-based organization that aims to combat mental health discrimination, over a third of the public think people with a mental health problem are likely to be violent. But again, this is not true. In reality, there's no factual or scientific evidence to suggest a connection between mental illness and violence. Now going back to the specific analysis of this movie, the climactic act of violence in the Joker occurred in the very end when he shot his childhood hero Murray Franklin on live TV. Prior to this, you may see many scenes of the Joker grabbing his gun and pretending to shoot himself, actually right before he went on stage. Carl Menninger referred to suicide as an inverted homicide, and during either act of violence, there is a propensity for one to have the urge or the wish to kill, the wish to be killed, and the wish to die. So you can easily have an interchangement of those wishes, and I think that's what happened when he ultimately killed Murray. Another thing that most viewers don't know, and I only know this because I remember reading about this a few years ago when actually doing research on suicide, but there was an actual on-air live suicide live on TV. Her name was Christine Chubbuck, and she was a newscaster in Florida who shot herself doing a live broadcast in 1974. Apparently she was very depressed. Very successful, yet very disconnected with the world. So yeah, classic suicide live on air. In the Joker movie, there was a classic homicide, or what I consider an inversion or retroflexion of suicide live on air. This was at the height of Joker's mental illness. The sole admiration of himself and no one else has reached to this very moment the pinnacle, reflective of his antisocial personality disorder. However, I don't believe any of the end happened. Wait, allow me to elaborate on that. I believe the first part of the movie happened, but when the moment or scene when Arthur asked the social worker to how he's going to get his medication after she had announced to him that she can no longer see him because the place was shutting down, I believe a little after that point is when he at some point became hospitalized at the state hospital. I've seen it time and time again in my professional career. Even after a week of being off medications, for someone such as that, similar to the Joker, in combination with all the stressors such as the bullying, loss of job, etc., this is long enough for one to slide a slippery slope into madness, no matter what the medications are being prescribed for. Plus, we know earlier on in the movie, they showed a flashback of him banging his head against the locked seclusion room in the state hospital. What we refer to as bounce back or return back to the hospital is high in repeat offenders, so it wouldn't surprise me if he went back to the hospital. Notice how later toward the middle to end of the movie, everything was falling into place for the Joker. Everything seemed organized and well planned and going his way. He just seemed artificially more confident from all the hijinks and mishaps and the getting away with his murders and such. You don't usually see that, especially for someone who's been off his meds. The stealing his medical chart was probably an elaborate fantasy that he thought up of and fantasized while he was stuck in the hospital. Besides, no way would anyone allow someone to see another person's medical information / chart, in this case his mother's, without some sort of document indicating that he was a power medical attorney, of which he wasn't. And the stealing it and running down the stairwell and reading the chart without anyone following him, again, all part of his grandiose delusions. These delusions of grandeur serve to heighten his own self-adulation and importance throughout the remainder of the movie, even to the point of visualizing a fantasy in his head of his shooting in the head the one person who ridiculed him on TV earlier in the movie. The shooting in the head was symbolic of his unconsciously wanting to shoot himself in the head because of how he was suffering in the state hospital, which is also probably why we see many snapshots throughout the movie of his pointing a gun right below his jaw and upwards without actually completing the suicide. And the movie appeared to be set in the late 70s or early 80s, I believe. He probably vividly remembered or had that Christine Chubbuck suicide in 74 filed in his subconscious, and hence was able to incorporate that specific vivid scene into his own delusion or distorted thought process while he was in the hospital. All of it was pretty much part of his distorted reality. The being pulled out of the cop car and placed upon the trunk in a Jesus pose. Religious delusions are also very common. All these delusions and distorted perceptions of reality nicely fit his narrative. It's the Joker's unconscious working in overtime, helping to soothe and create a comfort level that he is happy and content with. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that while all this was going on, there was civil unrest and battle between the very rich and the poor. I do believe that Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered just by chance related to the civil uprising, but I think it was more to do with that than just with the Joker. Or if it were related to the Joker, he was nowhere near all this was going on. And the ending with his running through the halls with bloody footprints and indication that he killed the psychiatrist and the orderlies chasing him, all part of his imagined, distorted reality. In other words, probably didn't happen. Wow, what a masterpiece. I've only seen it one time, plan on seeing it a few more times so I can pick up more. Out of all the symbols, I think the most important and the most obvious was the stairwell. The top represented the superego, or the part of a person's mind that acts as a self-critical conscience. Now compared to the bottom, this represented the Joker's id, or the disorganized part of the tripartite apparatus that contains the instinctual primitive drives, most notably aggression in Joker's case. Yeah, very important part of the movie. Notice how that scene, the very top was where the cops were, again representing the superego, and the bottom was the id, and how the Joker ran down and it was completely id from then on, baby. And it is usually the disorganized entity that is at the forefront and in charge of most folks who are mentally unstable when the ego is very weak, fragile, and or non-existent more or less, just as in Joker's case, especially having been off medication, not to mention the therapy if you want to call it that, in combination with the cumulative stressors. Alright, well thanks guys and gals for watching my video on the Joker, my analysis. Did you folks like the movie? Please comment yes or no, if you liked it or hated it. What didn't you like? What did you like? Any kind of comments you want, please make a comment. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe if you want. If you want to like, please like likewise. Let's make the world a better place and let's learn to laugh again. Okay, I had that coming.